What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you an updated meta-analysis for the July 2018 format. We just had the largest European WCQ of all time come to a close, so I wanted to discuss what the results were from that event because this event's kind of going to dictate how the format's going to look and shape pretty much until we get a new ban list, because the only large event remaining is the World Championship, which doesn't apply to 99% of us and doesn't really dictate anything else except for maybe what might happen on the ban list. But even with Cybernetic Horizon coming out at the end of July, there's not really a whole lot that's going to impact the meta in a significant way. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. So big shout outs today to XQGV as well as PC Wiz. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So here is the pie chart of the top 64 breakdown of the European World Championship qualifier. I believe this had around 1,624 participants, might have been a little bit higher than that, but the fact that this was the largest European WCQ, I think really just goes to show where the game is at this point in time. A lot of people are really just getting reinvigorated by the game, even though there's some things like the new end of match procedures and things that people might not be too fond of. The fact that we're getting record-breaking attendance at these events pretty much has to say something, right? But here's what's the most interesting thing that you can take away from this event, and that is the fact that Gouki actually managed to eclipse Sky Striker Trickstar in terms of top cut representation. Not by much, I think it's only by like one slot when you count in the Mech Knight Trickstar Sky Strikers as well, but I think that's rather fascinating since if you track the evolution of how Gouki has performed, especially in a European region where Linkuriboh isn't legal. Now, I know we've discussed in the past that Linkuriboh isn't like live or die when it comes to Gouki, but it actually makes a pretty substantial difference, and every event we've seen up to this point, the Gouki players have had very low representation until we hit the North American WCQ where Linkuriboh was legal, and then we saw it, doing rather well and ended up winning the entire event. But this is different because this is a region where Linkuriboh isn't legal, and I think because of the techs and innovations from the North American WCQ, those pretty much bled into the European just players' mindsets and how they wanted to approach the format, and that's kind of why you're seeing Gouki in this position. Now, one of the interesting things to take note of is that after round 11, if you look at the overall representation of what decks were still out in the field, Trickstar Sky Striker actually outnumbered Gouki about 2-1, and that's a pretty big deal when you look at it, because even though Gouki had the higher representation in top cut, Sky Striker Trickstar was still performing at a much, just higher level in terms of these other decks. So the thing you have to realize is that if you're going to any sort of competitive event within the coming weeks before we get a new ban list or anything like that, you're probably still going to see Sky Striker Trickstar more than any other deck. Now, obviously, Gouki's on the rise, so I'm sure that people are going to start jumping on that train as well, but just based on the fact that, after round 11, Sky Striker Trickstar still had a 2-1 ratio on Gouki, I think that really does say a lot, and something you definitely have to consider. But realistically, Gouki was the deck of the format and really did steal the show. We saw the innovations from the North American WCQ, basically due in part to Neospace and Aqua Dolphin, and Neospace and Aqua Dolphin actually won the entire event. If you were watching the live stream, honestly, the effect of Aqua Dolphin to burn the opponent for 500 is what won the game in time. Now, we're not going to get into the whole end of match procedure argument here, but you know what? A win's a win, and congratulations to Luke for getting that far. Now, one of the big innovations, though, outside of Aqua Dolphin, is kind of the way that the Gouki players approach their deck, because rather than making it focused on kind of Isolde Turbo, and the deck is still like that, they actually took a more rank 3 approach utilizing MX Saber Invoker. Since Neospatian Aqua Dolphin happens to be a warrior and pretty much just synergizes with the entire deck already, a lot of the players were kind of focusing their decks to just turbo out Invoker so that they could also use the Dolphin in tandem with whatever level 3 they might want to play, whether it's Instant Fusion for Dragoness the Wicked Knight, whether it's Marauding Captain, whether it's Junk Forward, or, if it's just any card that can realistically get you to Invoker. I mean, they were even playing Speedroid Terror Top with the one copy of Takatomborg. That just goes to show how much they were trying to turbo into their Invoker. But I think that's a very interesting kind of turn of events when it comes to the Gouki player's mindset, and it's probably going to be the build you're going to start seeing moving forward. Now, Linkuriboh does become legal in all regions, restrictions at the end of this week at the time of recording this video, so we'll just have to see the impact that that has. But Summon Sorceress is also legal now as well, and this is maybe only be for the North American territories, but that's going to change up things a lot because now it makes Gouki, Sky Striker, Trickstar, a lot of other decks as well, like ABC and all these other different things, have a lot more just potential combos that are going to be extremely explosive the more this format progresses. Now, I still want to talk about Sky Striker Trickstar because this is still the most represented deck of the entire format, even though Gouki has pretty much been on the rise and has won the last 2 WCQs. Sky Striker Trickstar still has the highest representation. Now, one of the big things here is that only, I believe, 3 out of these 20 Sky Striker Trickstar decks that made the top cut were actually utilizing the Mech Knights, and I find that rather interesting of a shift because the Mech Knights are kind of utilized in tandem to combat the mirror match, and so maybe the players for the European WCQ saw Gouki as a bigger threat, and the Mech Knights don't really help you in that particular matchup too much, so I think maybe they wanted to go for a more streamlined build that was kind of balanced against the Gouki and the mirror, while pretty much not favoring one or the other. That's very realistically possible, especially since we're seeing Gouki on an upward trend, but for the most part, the deck is still doing what it does best. I mean, I'm pretty sure it got second at the European WCQ and still managed to take up a ton of top slots, so even though Gouki's on the rise, you cannot discount Trickstar Sky Striker in the slightest. Coming up in third, though, you had Pure Sky Striker. This deck still manages just to sit at a solid third place position. I pretty much think it's going to stay here for a very long time, and that's perfectly fine. I think the end of match procedures kind of hinder how well the deck can perform, especially as a tournament progresses, but it's a very good control deck, and it's really good at out-resourcing the opponent, so it's still something you have to look out for. Beyond that, though, you've still got in the last, third of this pie chart, kind of all the straggler decks. I mean, you've got stuff like Dinosaur, you've got Burning Abyss, you've got Pendulum, you've got just all the decks that are able to just nab 1 or 2 tops every single one of these Nationals or WCQs. They keep managing to sneak their way in there, and I think that's pretty good because even though we have 2 dominant decks, it shows that there's kind of a lot of room for diversity in terms of the other decks you might go up against. It's not like a triangle format or a 3-deck format or anything like that. But some of the highlights of the straggler decks in the other category, we've got stuff like a Gem Knight FTK managing to make the top cut. We've got a Zephyra Magispector Pendulum Magician deck, which is pretty much just like your normal Pendulum Magician deck, except you've got stuff like Zephyr Divine Strike, kind of setting up multiple negates, but just doing it in a different fashion. And I think the deck that everyone was the most excited for was Michael Forner's Phantom Knight Hero deck, which basically kind of just turbos out Darklaw through Isolde, and can do just a lot of really cool things. I believe he managed to make it to the top 16, and that's just really cool to see kind of this level of innovation at this late stage of the current format, just because, you know, things are kind of wrapping up. People don't really want to just try new things just because everything's kind of been defined, but that's also where you can innovate because things are so streamlined, you can kind of seize an opportunity where you find it. So I think that's what we're going to be seeing moving forward. I did want to touch on, you know, Cybernetic Horizon, because this is a set that's not really going to have a massive impact on this format, and really what's going to shake up this format is a ban list, and the World Championship will have an effect on the ban list that we will end up seeing. It usually, typically, always does, so do keep that in mind. But realistically, if you're going to any tournaments that are in your local area, this should be what you should be expecting for the next few weeks. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this meta-analysis and what you think about the current format and what changes you might want to see as we move later on, especially once banlist season comes around. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.